jerking off in front of young comedians again.
What article was that? I don't even know.
It was a New Yorker article. Shane had a whole article written about it in the New Yorker, and it was.
They stopped writing articles about you, huh?
It was
Buddy,
no.
Seth?
It was. Oh yeah, Seth. I think.
Stop writing articles about you.
He doesn't mention me at all. I think
mention
my fans genuinely scared him.
Oh.
I think they were like, you know what,
he stopped writing about comedy.
No, he still writes about comedy, dude.
Oh my
I check up once in a while on his blog, his Seth Simons.
I don't know.
What is it? Substack. I do. He has it. I say, I'm like, dude, is he writing about me? And he avoids mentioning Legion of Skanks at all. I genuinely think you guys scared him in some fucked up way, dude. I'm not encouraging that, but good job. Good job, folks. No, he ended up getting really embarrassed because he wrote that article that got published.
Yeah.
And then, like...
saying that Chris Italia was fat?
Yeah, and then they found out that, like, a bunch of guys on a subreddit or the O&A forum were just feeding him fake information to be funny.
By the way, whoever that is, thank you.
Yeah, it was...
Whoever, and you're in the room.
And then
just the premise that Chris Italia uses the computer for anything other than recipes.com. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Doggy, then after this article comes out, right, and they let this article bake on the internet for like a month or 2 months. Then the people on this forum came out and they showed all of the receipts and proof about how they tricked him into feeding him fake information. And then he just completely went silent. Like, all of his tweets are protected now. He stopped talking about comedians. He's a fucking fool. Those people on that ONA forum legitimately fucking crushed that guy's soul, and they fucking rule for that. Those are good people.
And they saved comedy. And that's the Christmas story. It's a beautiful Christmas story.
It really is. Tim, what's the big thing that happened in your...
Hello, and welcome to Cryptic Web Chronicles. The clip you just watched was from a live episode of the podcast Bastard Radio, featuring comedians Luis J. Gomez, Nick Mullen, and Tim Dillon. During the show, Gomez would briefly delve into the story behind a tumultuous saga that he, his podcast, and numerous peers in the comedy scene found themselves entangled in. The story rocked the comedy scene, and is likely one of the craziest sagas I've ever witnessed unfold upon the internet. This is a tale rich with deception and betrayal, and features one of the most intricate psychological operations to ever be carried out by a troll in the name of investigative journalism. I'm talking about the infamous internet scandal that's now known as Apostlegate. While I've mentioned this story before on my channel, today's video will delve into the entirety of the Apostlegate saga, rather than focusing solely on Patrick Tomlinson's role, as we've done previously on this channel. Authored by investigative journalist Thomas Apostle, the Apostlegate articles intricately intertwine with Patrick's story, linking him to another failed comedian named Seth Simons, who has also become a subject of online ridicule. Upon joining forces, they would both ultimately be propelled towards a fate marred by miserable failure. As mentioned in my earlier video, the true identity of Thomas Apostle remains shrouded in mystery to this day, though he's almost revered as a mythical character on the Opie and Anthony forums, where legends depict him as a vape thief junkie with a heart of gold. This saga all really begins, however, with comedian Shane Gillis being fired from the television program Saturday Night Live. A rising star in the stand-up comedy scene, Gillis had been set to join the cast of SNL in late 2019, before it was taken away from him for reasons we'll soon discuss. For many comedians, landing a spot on SNL is seen as a pinnacle achievement, a validation of their talent, and a doorway to mainstream success. Therefore, when Gillis lost this opportunity, it was understandably devastating, leaving many of his fans outraged. Shane's dismissal from SNL ultimately stemmed from an article released by blogger Seth Simons shortly after Shane's hiring was announced. Seth had unearthed an old, out-of-context podcast clip of Shane Gillis making a mildly racist Asian joke and was using it to ruin as many opportunities for Shane as he could. Much like Patrick Tomlinson, Seth Simons seems to be a very far left-leaning, so-called woke individual that spends a lot of time being vindictive online towards people he deems political enemies. Seth has written several blog posts pretending to be a journalist, where he attempts to polarize comedy and inject politics and other preachy bullshit into the stand-up scene, mainly by bitching about more successful people's material. Ironically, however, Seth himself has been accused of problematic behavior in the past, Despite posing as a feminist and a women's ally, Seth Simons was accused of being a sex pest and showing predatory behavior towards women.
So it comes out a few days ago, maybe it was on Friday, that this girl tweeted out that, you know, there's a known guy who's like a feminist ally who's a fucking creep and a sex pest, and you know, we should point him out. And then she named him. She was like, yes, I'm talking about Seth Simons.
But she did the thing where she put stars in it.
Yeah.
So that
Sure.
I think that's a legal thing people do now.
Is that why it is legally?
I would assume so.
Well, I'm sure.
But her Twitter's gone now, right?
Yeah, she deleted her Twitter. Lots of comedy creeps out there. But don't forget that very woke comedy blogger who was full-on sex pest to my friend and others who corroborated stories in my DMs over the years. But always doing the most seems like a feminist. Remarkable cognitive dissonance. Men are magic. And then she added to that, yes, it's Seth Simons. I've tweeted this several times before. And hiding names is for losers who want to protect bad men. Happy Tuesday. And then she deleted her account right after that.
This pattern appears common among many men of this nature. Patrick S. Tomlinson presents himself in a similar fashion online, despite having pled guilty in 2011 for threatening to kill his own wife and newborn daughter. In the past, Seth Simons has taken a stab at being a comedian himself, though unlike Shane Gillis, he never achieved a comparable level of success. His most notable and well-known joke is an unfunny bit about spoken bird poetry that is cringe-inducing at best. Shane Gillis, who is more talented than Seth, had built up a significant fan base before the incident. As a result, his dismissal provoked a strong reaction and waves of support from his audience, as well as fellow comedians. At one point, famous comedian Norm Macdonald would even reach out to support Shane Gillis, while also pointing out how unfunny Seth Simons' material was in comparison. An SNL alumni himself, Norm had also been fired from SNL in the late 90s, after showcasing his brilliance on the show for 5 years. As a side note, Patrick Tomlinson likes to claim it's Norm Macdonald's fault. He's the target of a years-long trolling campaign by O&A forums. Patrick dishonestly claims that the O&A subreddit picked him randomly after he made a tweet, saying he never thought Norm Macdonald was funny. However, the truth is that Patrick knew about the Opie and Anthony community long before he made this tweet, previously having attacked and provoked members of O&A. It appears to me that Patrick gained the attention of r/Opie and Anthony on purpose, with the ultimate goal of turning his victimhood into fame, attention, and wealth. This, of course, failed miserably, and would completely ruin Patrick's life, as I've covered previously on this channel. I should mention at this point that it appears Norm Macdonald wasn't particularly fond of Patrick Tomlinson either. At some point later in the saga, he apparently agreed to film a video mocking Patrick on behalf of O&A forums.
Hey, this is Norm Macdonald here, and this is a message for all of Patrick's friends. I want you to stop picking on your friend Pat. After all, and I quote, his only crime was that he didn't find Norm Macdonald funny. Wait a minute here. I'm Norm Macdonald. Ha! And I am funny. Please continue insulting that fat loser. Ah.
It's obvious that Norm was unaware of the ongoing feud between Patrick Tomlinson and O&A when he filmed the video. Given what I know about Norm, I think it's unlikely that he would publicly comment or involve himself in a situation like this, even if he found the story funny in private. An O&A forums member reportedly bought the clip for $400 from Cameo, a site where celebrities create custom videos for fans. I suspect Norm believed he was creating it for a group of friends, unaware of the internet drama he'd been involved in. Later on, Norm was commissioned to create another Cameo for O&A forums. This time, however, he humorously noted that the requested message seemed like a cryptic code with hidden meanings. Indeed, the clip was filled with inside jokes from the O&A forums.
Hey, Brother Joe, Sue and the folks down at the Big Apple Ranch want me to remind you to feed Nana. God, I hope this is not a message to a drug cartel using some sort of code. Anyways, remember to feed Nana. Now, when I say that, I don't mean to take a big parcel of cocaine and put it inside of a lady's belly and then send her across the border. I mean simply to feed Nana. You know what I mean. And I know that you know what I mean. I'm Norm Macdonald. Godspeed.
Anyways, many people believe Seth Simons' bitterness over being a failed comedian is why he resorted to publishing hit pieces about other comedians online. It seems he was attempting to use the small platform he'd acquired to lash out at those who found success where he'd failed. However, as we'll soon see, this would come back to bite him. Not long after his attack on Shane Gillis, Seth began searching for a new target and eventually stumbled upon the Opie and Anthony forums. Having discovered a treasure trove of controversial content, he wasted no time in airing his grievances about the forum on Twitter. As I've covered previously on this channel, the O&A forums has had a years-long internet feud with Patrick Tomlinson, a failed stand-up comedian and Twitter addict living in Milwaukee. The Opie and Anthony community, which used to exist as a subreddit, was eventually banned from Reddit and forced to migrate to the forum, in part due to the actions of Patrick Tomlinson and some of his ball washers. Since then, Patrick and O&A have been engaged in a long-standing internet flame war, though as you might have already seen, Patrick ultimately has been the loser in all of this. In reaction to Seth Simons' newfound interest in O&A forums, a prominent O&A troll by the name of Space Edge would dox Seth Simons on the forums, posting his home address and phone number, and making a series of prank calls and texts to him. Additionally, users of the forum would mock a dietary website that Seth's mother ran, deriding its hypnotherapy diets and pseudoscientific content. The saga that followed would go on for months, growing increasingly crazy along the way, and ultimately ending with the release of the Apostlegate articles. Upon their release, Space Edge would reveal to the O&A forums that he was none other than investigative journalist Thomas Apostle. He disclosed how he had secretly orchestrated and meticulously crafted the drama between Seth Simons, Patrick Tomlinson, and O&A forums. It all centered around a character known as the Mole, which was Thomas Apostle / Space Edge in disguise. Thomas Apostle, posing as the Mole, first approached Seth Simons offering inside information about several well-known users on the O&A forums. Among these revelations was the identification of Space Edge as Canyon Boykin, a former police officer involved in a controversial shooting incident. Boykin, having shot a black man resisting arrest, was later acquitted of murder and eventually won a lawsuit against the city of Columbus, Mississippi, for wrongful termination. Additionally, the O&A forums owner Quasi101 was identified as an Indian man named Rahul Kumar, described as a career tech guru working at a call center in New York City. Another user, Toxic Cis White Male Fat, was revealed by the Mole to be the owner of the NYC comedy club The Stand, identified as Chris Italia. As a side note, Luis J. Gomez often hosted live episodes of his podcast Legion of Skanks at The Stand. A vocal and short-tempered figure within the comedy scene, Gomez wasted no time in criticizing Seth Simons following the firing of Shane Gillis. Consequently, his podcast, Legion of Skanks, also became a target. At some point, Seth even attempted to exploit New York's COVID-19 lockdowns in order to try and have officials cancel live Legion of Skanks shows at The Stand, not only to fuck with the podcast, but also to hurt Chris Italia's business. Somehow, Apostle had fooled Seth into believing that the Mole's revelations had shed light on the interconnected web of individuals involved in the online drama surrounding Patrick Tomlinson and O&A forums. In addition, Apostle had fooled him into thinking comedy club owner Chris Italia was somehow involved in the O&A forums trolling campaigns. The origin of Seth and Chris Italia's feud remains unclear to me. However, considering Chris's success in managing a thriving comedy club and fostering others' achievements, Seth's apparent focus on tearing down fellow members of the comedy scene seems rooted in jealousy. Seth Simons would respond to the mole's email, initially expressing his skepticism before admitting several details in the story lined up. He would go on to ask Thomas Apostle, "Are you able to divulge at all how you connected Space Edge and Quasi to their identities?" Apostle would write back, "Space Edge's name leaked when he hooked up with a girl user there named Carol Maxenheim. I guess he was getting too lovey with another user named Robert Mueller. Carol got pissed and leaked his Xbox gamertag. The gamertag was his Twitter, Insta, and email. It's all gone, deleted now. This was about 3 months ago. Quasi does IT work and was actually dumb enough to do side jobs on the forum. People were sending him laptops to fix. It leaked." Apostle, posing as the mole, would also tell Seth about a secret section hidden within the forum, only accessible to certain O and A forums VIPs. The mole convinced Seth this secret forum was a hidden planning ground for O and A trolls, with Space Edge, Quasi, Toxic Cis White Male Fat, and a number of others being present. In reality, the secret forum had solely been created to trick Seth Simons with fake posts, in order to steer him into believing the false narrative he was being fed by Thomas Apostle. At the same time as this, Seth would join the forum himself and began archiving posts. Additionally, he would tell Thomas Apostle about his plans to call Chris Italia and accuse him of being an O and A forums troll. Seth would write to the mole, "Here's what I'm thinking. Tomorrow I call him and ask directly if he's Toxic Cis White Male Fat. He'll deny it. I'll quote a couple of these posts, and he'll deny it again. Then you can let me know if he says anything on the private threads that indicates I'm onto him." He'd go on to write, "Honestly, I'm kind of scared of going after Space Edge, at least until I can. I don't know. Go stay in an Airbnb for a few days. Hopefully this Chris thing will put some fear in their hearts if it pans out. Still archiving old toxic posts. I'll let you know when I've called him." For the next few weeks, Seth Simons continually harassed Chris Italia via phone calls and emails. At the same time, he also continued to comb through O and A forums, ultimately stumbling upon a decoy account with the username Ape Von Tarskin. This account had specifically been made to trick Seth into thinking it was Chris Italia. At the same time, Thomas Apostle would continue feeding Seth screenshots from the secret forums, and eventually knowledge of Seth's spying efforts on the website would be leaked. Shortly afterwards, Seth revealed to the mole that he was finally ready to write and drum up interest for his article attacking Chris Italia. "Okay, I'll start writing. I'm also going to run the story by a few editors I know. Probably a long shot given the niche nature of the thing and my lengthy backstory with him, but might as well try to see if I can land it anywhere bigger than my newsletter." The day this email exchange took place, O&A forums coincidentally had a server issue and went down for several hours. This downtime, combined with the fake troll posts of users showing their fear of Seth, convinced Seth that the O&A forums was cowering away in fear, and that they were deleting as much evidence as they could. Several users would author fake posts where they appeared to be worried about the revelation that Seth Simons was spying on the forum. Seth wrote to the mole afterwards, "Wow, I'm kind of still shocked this all worked. But I guess it's true what they say about bullies being cowards." Seth would include screenshots of these fake troll meltdowns in pitches he made to Vice and Slate News, and included them in the upcoming article. As we discussed in the previous video, Patrick and the lawsuit he had filed against his trolls ultimately became a major part of the Apostlegate saga. Like Seth Simons, Patrick also fell victim to Thomas Apostle's deceit and manipulation, which ultimately derailed his lawsuit to the point Tomlinson owed the O&A forums admin over $50,000 in legal fees. On February 8, 2021, Seth Simons published his infamous New Republic article, which included the false information provided by Thomas Apostle. Seth Simons utilized the mole's fabricated screenshots and emails verbatim in the New Republic article, furthering his assault against his adversaries within the comedy industry. Seth and Patrick quickly conspired to exploit the New Republic's credentials in a lawsuit that aimed to identify and sue the admin of O&A forums and 59 other anonymous internet trolls, Unfortunately, Patrick's attorney, displaying a concerning level of incompetence, failed to grasp the significance of battling against Section 230 and Krinsky versus Doe 6, leaving them ill-prepared to confront the formidable legal challenges ahead. You see, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act provides immunity to online platforms like Reddit or O&A forums from liability for content posted by third-party users. Additionally, Krinsky versus Doe 6 is a legal case that further solidified this protection by affirming the right of internet posters to remain anonymous unless specific conditions are met. Overturning these legal precedents would have significant implications for online freedom of speech and platform accountability. Patrick's lawsuit against individuals criticizing his books and making personal attacks did not carry enough weight to challenge these major legal precedents. Seth's article about Chris Italia and O&A forums was widely circulated following its publication. It was even shared by Vice News. O&A forums shifted its focus to Seth and the Mole, which had become significant news alongside Patrick's unfolding lawsuit. Thomas Apostle fabricated reports of mass deletions and paranoia to demonstrate to Seth the impact his article had on O&A forums. At this juncture, vice journalist Anna Merlin entered the narrative, reaching out to the Mole, aka Thomas Apostle, via email. Anna wrote, "Hi there. I got your info from Seth Simons. I am a journalist at Vice News and part of a small team looking into the O&A forums, specifically their obsession with Patrick Tomlinson and anyone around him. I'd love to jump on the phone if you have a moment sometime in the next week." Unbeknownst to Anna, however, Thomas Apostle's accomplice, Josiah Munoz, conducted the phone interview on his behalf. Josiah would later emerge as a crucial figure in the saga, as we'll soon witness how he conducted a series of revealing phone interviews with Patrick S. Tomlinson that would ultimately result in more humiliation.
Hi, this is Anna from Vice News. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Sorry I missed you yesterday and then just now, and thank you for taking the time to call. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
So, I just kind of wanted to get a little sense from you of, like, your perception of this group and also their sort of current campaign against a couple people.
Yeah.
But first, can you, like, tell me a little bit about yourself to the extent that you're comfortable sharing anything? Like, how old are you? Where do you live?
I live in New York. I don't want to say too much else.
Okay.
I'm,
I get it. So, I guess, can you tell me, like, why you reached out to Seth, or, like, what your feeling is about the group, or how you joined it? Like, anything about it, really.
Well, I joined it back in 2014 after the Opie and Anthony show got canceled, and I was mainly I was mainly just doing it to, like, follow what the hosts were doing. And
Wait, so did you join it when it was still on Reddit?
yeah.
I remember it.
Yeah, the part that made me, like, stop appreciating them, though, was, like, once they just started going after random people that, like basically they started off as being, like, the people who Opie and Anthony sicked on their rivals, and so once they started hating Opie and Anthony Anthony stopped paying attention to them, they just started picking people at random. And actually, I did reach out to Patrick when they first started attacking him, and I basically just told them, like, this is how these people operate, and, just don't feed the trolls. Like, it'll all go away if you just ignore them. And he basically, he gave me, like, a very hostile response, and I guess didn't really listen to me. But I reached out to Seth for the same reason, and I basically told him what I know, because I know he's, like, a journalist. So they only started going after Seth, like, last October. So that's basically how I got into contact with Seth.
Following the phone interview, the Mole would not hear from Anna Merlin for a while. In the meantime, though, he would reach out Patrick Tomlinson to discuss his lawsuit and the revelation that Space Edge, Quasi, and Chris Italia had been unmasked. The mole wrote to Patrick. "Hello, Mr. Tomlinson. I am one of Seth Simons' main sources for his recent article. Seth reached out to me and asked if I was willing to talk to you. I am willing. You can verify my identity with Seth if needed. I understand you have already spoken. Let me start off by giving you my condolences. Having this pack of insanely resourceful trolls on your back couldn't have been easy. I have a collection of information on these people that Seth could not put in the article, and I'm willing to answer your questions." Patrick would write back, "Thank you for your email. My first question is, how long have you been involved with the O&A cyber stalking group, and what was, or is, your handle there? Would I recognize you? Second question, how much and what kind of personal information do you have on the other core members like Quasi 101, Space Edge, Somerville Dan, etc., and how confident are you in its accuracy? Third and final question for now, why are you now helping targets like Seth and myself?" The mole would respond to Patrick saying, "Well, actually, I'm not part of that group, but I am an O&A fan. The group you have problems with isn't the whole fan base, it's the warped faction that Anthony Cumia, Italia, and others have created. I was embedded with that group for just under a year collecting information. As far as my handle goes, there is another article in the works at a major publication, and I cannot share that yet. Seth can confirm this article. It's big. I suppose you want to know if I harassed you. The answer is no. I have the real name, location, and even numbers of both Quasi and Space Edge, and others. I'm working on one right now that's a main power user. I'm close. My information is 100% and is good enough that it will be published a second time soon. As I've explained above, I'm not a troll turned good. This entire thing was done to expose these people. I've been helping Seth for months now. I think I can significantly help you too. Seth seems to think so too." Patrick would reply to the mole, writing, "Seth shared Quasi and Space Edge's information with me. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, if you're not part of the obsessive campaign to ruin my life, how exactly did you get into the good graces of the core group and be allowed into the secret forum in the first place? Anyway, I too have a piece being worked on for a major publication about his campaign. The journalist in question is currently interviewing victims of onafforums.net and corroborating my story through other avenues. They may be interested in speaking with you as well if you're open to it. I could give them this email address and have them contact you. I'd be very interested in any other possible IDs you have, because as you probably know, we're very close to imposing actual real-world consequences on these people. The last hurdle is unmasking them." The mole would write an email back to Patrick. "Getting in wasn't easy. It took months. I did little things like find an archive page, submitted some code that downloads the old radio show. This, along with just plain talking to people, eventually got me into a staging area for newer members. In a few weeks, I was allowed into the secret forum. At that point, I was acting as an informant for Seth." Thomas Apostle was now feeding false information to Patrick and Seth. Both, in turn, were giving that information to Patrick's lawyer, Brinton Resto, so that it could be used in Pat's lawsuit against O&A forums. Additionally, Patrick's lawyer, Brinton, would also, in a moment of stupidity, submit Seth's article as evidence in the lawsuit as well. Now, completely false information concocted by Thomas Apostle was being piped directly into Patrick's lawsuit, which ironically targeted Apostle and other O&A trolls. Space Edge found himself the target of Patrick's lawsuit, but paradoxically, he had developed a close rapport with Patrick to supply him with misinformation about his own identity, aiming to sabotage the suit and humiliate Patrick. While I appreciate the absurdity of this scenario, it's likely that Patrick didn't see the humor in it, especially once the reality set in that he had wasted months of his time, thousands of SFWA's dollars, and also been fucked out of another $70,000 by his own internet trolls. At this point, however, others in the comedy scene were also seeking ways to retaliate against Seth Simons, since he had published an article full of false and defamatory statements with no evidence to back them up. Eventually, Danny Zolden, another comedy club owner in New York City, would organize a comedy festival with the sole purpose of spiting Seth and showing support for the comedians he had targeted. The festival would be held in Idaho, where Seth Simons was living with his parents at the time. Thomas Apostle would exploit this event and fool Seth into believing several O&A forum members would be meeting up at the Idaho Comedy Fest. Simultaneously, the mole began sending Seth and Patrick fake post screenshots, alleging they could potentially reveal the identity of another prominent O&A forums troll named Carol Max Heine. Consequently, both Pat and Seth found themselves embarking on a wild goose chase for information that proved to be entirely fabricated. Their shared objective was to expose as many trolls as possible to bolster Patrick's lawsuit. As the first hearing for the lawsuit approached, Patrick reached out to the mole inquiring about the troll's intentions regarding the hearing. As I covered in the previous video, Patrick's court appearance for a speeding ticket was disrupted by a troll employing a soundboard. As a result, Patrick experienced a wave of anxiety-induced flatulence, farting numerous times while the judge spoke. Patrick also requested the mole to provide evidence confirming Quasi's identity as Rahul Kumar, emphasizing its crucial significance for his lawsuit. In response, the mole provided a fake screenshot from the secret forums, purportedly leaking Quasi's address after he was commissioned to repair a laptop for one of the trolls. In addition, the mole would deliver some major news to Patrick and Seth. Apparently, a bug had been discovered in O&A forums code, and Thomas Apostle would exploit it to hack into a debug account with admin access. This account could be used to spy on an even more secret part of the forum, called Sue's Alamo. The mole would send this hacked account's username and password to Seth and Patrick, and they both immediately began using it to snoop on Sue's Alamo, hoping to discover more compromising information on O&A forums trolls. Patrick would later include screenshots from this secret forum in his lawsuit, meaning he had exploited this website bug to get evidence to submit in court. At the same time, O&A forums users would discover a series of filings with the state tax authorities that, according to O&A, suggested Nikki had cheated on her taxes. The mole would question Patrick about his tax problems. Patrick would respond, "Yeah, that was nothing. Misfiled a tax form with the state. Fixed it and owed nothing after review." The mole would respond, "It's none of my business, but I've dealt with misfiles in my own company. The courthouse record didn't get updated. Even though it's fixed on your end, it will show up. You should be able to get it fixed quick at the courthouse." Patrick replied, "We don't care, honestly. It's fixed with the state Dept of Revenue, and that's all that matters." A few days later, Patrick and his wife actually paid what they owed to the state, resulting in the page updating to reflect that the debt had been cleared. It appears as though the mole's questioning motivated Patrick and his wife into finally paying the state what they owed. Around this time, O&A trolls also exposed that Seth Simons was residing with his parents and allegedly received nearly $15,000 from the U.S. government through the Paycheck Protection Program, better known as a PPP loan. Many believe that Seth exploited the system by claiming the COVID-19 pandemic hurt his blog's profits, and that he was entitled to taxpayer money distributed to small businesses affected by the pandemic. It may come as no surprise that Patrick Tomlinson and his wife Nikki also obtained similar PPP loans, showcasing their apparent adeptness at manipulating government programs for free money while simultaneously evading taxes. As the trolling against him continued, Seth Simons apparently grew impatient. He confided in the mole that he had started calling random people in New York City with the name Rahul Kumar and accusing them of being the admin of the Opie and Anthony forums. Seth also told the mole that he was finally building up the courage to call Canyon Boykin, the killer cop that was supposedly posting as Space Edge on O&A forums and using his access to police computers to dox numerous people, including Patrick and Seth. The mole would also inform Seth that a parody song had been created about him.
ratioed and I lock my account. I take a look at my mom and realize she wants me out, cause I've been ratting and tattling so long. Even the Twitter faggots think my mind is gone, but I ain't never got drunk and touched a woman's leg. I ain't a sex pest, you know that's unheard of. You better watch how you're talking and what you're thinking, or you and your nigger's gonna end up sinking. Hey, you say nope, but I gotta grope. As they joke, I see myself on the verge of stroke. Fool, I'm the kind of Jew that be abusing PPP in my bed, beating meat. Need a job, but I wanna cheat. Dad paid my rent all my life, living in a Jewish paradise. Don't check my early life, living in a Jewish paradise.
Seth would respond to this parody with anger, writing in an email to the mole. I swear it takes all my self-control not to explain to these people that 1, the PPP loan is literally based on the income they think I don't make, and 2, as the info they doxed clearly demonstrates, I don't live with my parents. Seth would go on to accuse Chris Italia as being the creator of this parody song and others that had been shared among the O and A community. Thomas Apostle would then provide Seth Simons with a phone number for Canyon Boykin. However, in reality, this number belonged to an O and A forums member that was working with Thomas Apostle. Seth would go on to leave a voicemail for Canyon at this number.
Hi, Canyon. My name is Seth Simons. I'm a freelance journalist covering the entertainment industry. Your name came up in something I'm working on, and I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions real quick. If you have a second, give me a call at 617-281-95.
Space Edge would post this voicemail to the secret forum that Seth and Patrick had access to through the hacked account in order to further convince Seth that he had finally found the identity of Space Edge. In the post, he pretended to panic over the fact Seth had supposedly identified him. Now that Seth was certain he had Canyon Boykin's phone number, he shifted to trying to identify Quasi's number. In an email to the mole, Seth would confess he had resorted to calling every individual in New York named Rahul Kumar with the hopes of finding the O and A forums admin. Seth also told the mole that he had began to harass Canyon Boykin's family, calling his wife to accuse her of being married to an O and a forums troll. At this point, the mole approached Patrick and inquired whether he had a log of all the phone numbers that were harassing him. Patrick, however, confessed that he did not possess such a log. This revelation starkly contrasted with his earlier assertions that every harassing number was being reported to the police to assist in their investigation. Patrick then shared images and video with the mole depicting the alleged vandalism committed against his house and motorcycle by O and A trolls. The graffiti artist, captured on Patrick's security camera in a peculiar 10-second clip, used dry erase marker for the bizarre messages, which were easily erasable. Furthermore, many observers pointed out the striking resemblance between the supposed vandal and Patrick, noting similarities in clothing, physique, and hairstyle. Additionally, the vandal displayed no reaction when Patrick's motion-activated light turned on, indicating a high level of familiarity with Patrick's residence and awareness of the light's presence. Some theorize that this is actually Patrick in the video, vandalizing his own property for attention. Despite the mole's inquiries about the specifics of the vandalism incident, Patrick failed to provide any answers or additional information. Moreover, he never supplied a police report number to corroborate the incident, implying that he took no concrete action in response to the vandalism beyond capturing images of it in order to garner sympathy and attention online. This, along with the fact the graffiti artist's handwriting greatly resembles Patrick's, further suggests Pat was the actual person behind the vandalism. The mole would email Seth expressing concerns about Patrick's lawsuit. In addition to highlighting the potential challenges posed by Section 230 and anti-SLAPP laws, the mole also questioned the competence of Brinton Resto and noted his apparent naivety and lack of knowledge on the matter. At one point during a hearing, to further stall the case from being dismissed, Brinton would even lie to the judge, stating that they believed all of the John Does in Patrick's lawsuit lived in Wisconsin. This was obviously not true, and prior to this, several of the trolls had made it clear that they didn't even live in the United States, let alone Wisconsin. Seth responded by expressing his need for additional evidence confirming Canyon Boykin's identity as Space Edge. He also emphasized the potential suspicion that would arise if he were to identify Canyon solely based on the mole's unverifiable story about an old Xbox gamertag linking Space Edge to Canyon Boykin. Ironically, Seth had the suspicion that if this happened, people would come to the conclusion that the mole was secretly Space Edge trying to discredit Simons. Seth also recognized the fact he could be sued for harassment or defamation if he continued to accuse Canyon Boykin without solid evidence, even though he claims the hypothetical case would, quote, end up nowhere because the truth is on his side. Seth would then go on to tweet screenshots from the secret forum that he acquired using the hacked login the mole provided him. Seth did this without consulting the mole, and neither him nor Patrick seemed to realize that they had just outed him to O and A forums. Had he been real? The mole would email Seth Simons afterwards telling him that despite his tweet, the mole still had access to the secret forum. The mole also expressed his desire to expose Canyon before it was too late. Seth would respond to the mole, acknowledging that tweeting screenshots from the secret forum was a regrettable, anger-driven impulse. Seth also emphasized that while he was afraid to make any further attacks against Canyon Boykin at this point, he was optimistic that the lawsuit was going to work out in his and Patrick's favor. However, Seth was afraid that because Canyon was a former cop and lived in a state with anti-slap laws, there was a chance he could get away with what he had supposedly done. As these events unfolded, the Idaho Comedy Fest drew nearer, and Seth grew increasingly paranoid and desperate to substantiate his belief that Canyon was Space Edge. At one point, Seth would even tell the mole he considered hiring a private investigator to follow Canyon and his wife for information. At the same time, Seth would complain that he was receiving an increasing number of prank calls and troll text messages, thanks to posts shared on O and A forums regarding the Idaho Comedy Fest. Several users announced their plans to attend the comedy festival and stay in a particular hotel. Seth confided in the mole about his internal dilemma, whether to leave town for his own safety or stay behind to surveil the comedy festival and the hotel, attempting to identify O and A users. In reality, there was no O and A meetup scheduled for the Idaho Comedy Fest. It was just another one of Thomas Apostle's lies, further deceiving Seth Simons in order to play mind games with him. The mole then forwarded screenshots from the secret forums to Seth Simons and Patrick Tomlinson, indicating that Space Edge intended to appear on the podcast Come Town to discuss the Seth Simons saga. The screenshots also suggested that another podcaster named Mersh, known for the podcast Revenge of the Sis, had allegedly approached Space Edge for the same purpose. Furthermore, the screenshots revealed that Come Town host Nick Mullen had a presence on the O and A forums under the pseudonym Voodoo Child and had participated in trolling Patrick on multiple occasions. Seth would respond by noting that Come Town had mentioned him before and that he had been spying on the Come Town forums for a while.
Oh, Seth Simons, you could fucking bring it,
Yeah.
dude. Yeah.
I spent the weekend doing gay research. I
What
put
a
my
fucking
phone in-
nerd,
yeah.
dude. You know what the funniest
What
part
a
is? That
fucking loser.
That guy
sucks.
He did it. He did this whole thing, and he's like been like clearly tweeting 24 hours a day, not sleeping for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
like losing it.
Break-
He probably
thinking-
did it for $500 for like
Yeah.
one like
And he
Vulture
still has
article.
like 3,000 followers. It's
You
not
don't
like he
get
blew up.
$500 to write a Vulture article.
How much do you
You
get?
probably pay $100 freelancing.
Amazing.
What a
Yeah.
fucking-
Amazing.
It's also, he didn't write a Vulture
It-
article. It was on
Wait,
Substack.
is that guy trying to also be a comedian?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he's a failed comic.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, he just reeks of failure.
But that's the other
fucking
thing too.
sucks,
First
dude.
of all, as a failed comic myself, I take offense to this idea that like all failed comics turn into these critics of the fucking
That's
thing.
true.
No, but all critics probably are.
Well,
failed
it's
comics.
critics or podcasters, and you chose your path, dude.
I chose my path.
Yeah.
I chose the more noble of the two.
But
the mage. It's like choose your.
At this point, Patrick's lawsuit began to gain momentum. Kiwi Farms, although merely an archive of his posts and history, was named in Patrick's lawsuit. Kiwi Farms sought to quash the subpoena with assistance from attorney Robert Barnes. Meanwhile, Patrick's original complaint from the Milwaukee lawsuit became publicly accessible and became a subject of ridicule on the O and A forums. In the lawsuit, Patrick mentioned Space Edge around 12 times. However, some of his assertions lacked coherence. In one instance, Patrick alleged that Space Edge had called him, urging him to commit suicide. Yet the provided evidence showed a post recounting a call where the opposite occurred, with Patrick being the one that told Space Edge to kill himself. Many users targeted by Patrick stood by their statements in defiance of the lawsuit. Doe 33 would write, "I stand by my statement that Patrick is an unhinged, depressed alcoholic and is married to a lesbian. I would also add that he is quite rotund." John Doe 36, who is accused of sharing a lewd photograph of Patrick. "I swear under penalty of perjury punishable by death and $23,739.25 that the image of Patrick S. Tomlinson sucking President Donald Trump's cock is 100% real and genuine." John Doe 34, none other than Dan Mullen, would respond, "My Twitter comment was clearly made in jest about Patrick's book being shareware. I did not illegally download his work, nor did I provide anyone the means to download his work. Patrick continually harassed me behind a block on Twitter. He also spread the falsehood that I am a felon." Patrick brags about having guns and wanting to inflict harm on innocent people he disagrees with, including women and POCs. "I've spoken with legal counsel, and if Patrick ever does try to come after me in court, I will not only go through and win quash proceedings, but I will also consider countersuing Mr. Tomlinson for his harassment and defamation of me. BTW, my Twitter account hasn't existed for almost a year, so I have no idea what his problem still is with me." Dan would go on to write, "These messages the plaintiff is referring to literally do not exist. What does exist is a threatening voicemail Mr. Tomlinson sent to me on Christmas Eve 2020. My entire holiday was interrupted by a drunk Mr. Tomlinson telling me that when he finds out my identity, he's going to kill me. I'm not that worried because Mr. Tomlinson is a coward. However, my lawyer is in possession of the recording and will release this audio in court if necessary. One last thing. Get a fucking job, Patrick, you miserable fat piece of shit." At this point, the mole would send newly fabricated evidence to Patrick and Seth, with Seth forwarding the evidence to vice journalist Anna Merlin. Utilizing a series of screenshots from the secret forum, to which Seth and Patrick no longer had access, the mole successfully persuaded both of them that Space Edge and Quasi were embroiled in a feud concerning the lawsuit. These screenshots bolstered the mole's narrative that the forums were in turmoil, depicting Space Edge and other users turning against Quasi and preparing to migrate to another website. In the screenshots, trolls also accused Quasi of turning over user information to Patrick's lawyers. As a result, many users began making posts that shared anti-Indian sentiments, further convincing Seth and Patrick that Quasi's true identity was Rahul Kumar. In addition to this, the Stand Comedy Club would host Anthony Cumia, and images from the event circulated on social media. The mole forwarded these images to Seth Simons, suggesting that Chris Italia held this event merely to taunt Seth about his O&A forums involvement. Of course, this was not true, as Anthony Cumia frequently appeared at various venues in New York, as he was still loosely connected to the stand-up comedy scene. Nevertheless, these images fueled Seth's delusions, serving in his mind as further evidence of Chris Italia's involvement in the O&A forums and the conspiracy against Seth and Patrick. Around the same time, Patrick's third court hearing had arrived. Tomlinson's lawsuit, based out of Wisconsin, now hinged on a series of hearings in California in order to move forward. Due to the hearing being held in a different state, Patrick had to retain a lawyer who was licensed to practice in California courts. Unfortunately, the attorney he chose appeared to lack qualifications for much of anything. Patrick's lawyer, which many O&A forums users mockingly referred to as Stavros Esquire, would bring no arguments or evidence with him to the hearings. Instead, he simply repeated the claims that O&A forums was racist, expecting the judge to grant Patrick's motion based solely on these allegations alone. Immediately after the hearing concluded, vice journalist Anna Merlin would email the mole to discuss the train wreck that they'd just witnessed. Anna and Thomas Apostle would exchange their concerns about Patrick's lawsuit, agreeing that it was not going well and its future appeared to be in jeopardy. In addition to this, they would discuss the status of the O and A forums, which remained public and was going strong as ever despite the supposed freakout and infighting that Seth's article and Patrick's lawsuit had purportedly caused. The mole would also inform Anna Merlin about the SFWA's involvement in Patrick's lawsuit. As I covered in the previous video, the SFWA secretly provided Patrick with funding in order to sue O and A forums after users their exposed pedophilia among SFWA's ranks. The SFWA had even formed a troll task force to try and find ways to silence O and A forums and hide the fact that numerous SFWA members were known pedophiles. The group appeared to be okay with having members that were pedophiles, and even publicly supported and raised legal funds at one point for a repeat offender that was caught molesting children and possessing child porn on multiple occasions. To this day, the SFWA has allowed outspoken pedophiles to remain within their organization. Of course, Anna Merlin laughed these SFWA claims off as more lies from O and A forums without even researching them, immediately comparing them to the QAnon conspiracy theory. Ironically, however, Anna herself was falling for O and A's conspiracy theories by continuing to work with and believe the mole. The mole would go on to send Anna a comprehensive email covering the pedophiles SFWA has harbored and protected over the years. Anna would completely ignore this information and instead told the mole that she would be ready to write a Vice article about Patrick once the lawsuit had advanced a bit further. However, as we will soon witness, Anna's confidence in Patrick's lawsuit and the story as a whole would quickly diminish, leading to the Vice article never being published. You see, Josiah had taken the initiative to register the domain name huffpostnews.net and establish an email linked to the domain. When engaging in email correspondence, an ignoramus such as Patrick might easily confuse Josiah for a legitimate Huffington Post journalist. This, coupled with the personal introduction by the mole, instilled enough trust in Patrick to agree to a 1-hour phone interview with Josiah.
This is Patrick. How can I help you?
Hey, Patrick, this is Josiah from Huffington Post. How are you?
Yes, sir. I'm well. Thanks for calling.
Well, thanks for taking the time. Before we start, I just wanted to let you know that this is being recorded. However, this recording will not be released to the public in any way. We're just going to use it as a reference. So I just wanted to...
I understand. I've done a few of these now. So.
Okay. My first question to you is, how has this group of people on the internet, on ONA forums, affected your life outside of the internet? Let's start there.
Well, I mean, immensely. They've come to my house. They've videotaped themselves trespassing on my property in order to intimidate us. They've vandalized both our home and my motorcycle in just the last couple of weeks here. They've left graffiti around my neighborhood in places that they know I walk in between, knowing that I'll see it. They harass local businesses that they know I frequent, trying to harass and annoy and intimidate the owners and employees into making it just too difficult to do business with me and ban me from the premises. They text me harassment every single day. They email me harassment almost every single day. They have sent, they send fake food orders, defrauding local restaurants to my house almost every single day. They have twice sent the police to our house on using fake police reports. Including one episode which I would definitely categorize as swatting, because at 11:30 at night on a Thursday during lockdown, I answered the door in my bathrobe to 2 uniformed police officers of Milwaukee County or of Milwaukee City with their hands on their guns, demanding that I tell them where the children are.
Oh my
where they created a fake Craigslist ad pretending to be me, offering up free sausage and pepperoni that I had made in my basement out of the bodies of black children that I had kidnapped from the neighborhood. And then...
I'm sorry.
No, you heard me correctly.
Where did they...
No,
I know. Where did they get that from? Is that like...
Well, they think grinding black children up into sausage is hilarious. It's a recurring joke with them.
Do you know why it's a recurring joke with them? Is there...
Because they are terrorists and sociopaths who need to be put to death. That's why. These are the worst people on the face of the planet. They are utterly remorseless. They are utterly amoral. They are racists. They are white supremacists. They are transphobic. They are homophobic. They are anti-Semitic. They are fascist Nazis. Every last one of them. They are insane. They're delusional. They're obsessed. They have no redeeming human qualities of any sort.
Afterwards, Patrick would write an email to Josiah. Josiah, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today and hear our story. If you're interested, I can send you screenshots, video, and any other evidence I have to corroborate my claims. It's all 100% true, I have no need to exaggerate, but proof is always nice too. Josiah would respond, Thank you so much for the interview. I have shown it to some people on my team, and they are absolutely amazed by what they heard. We are having a meeting tomorrow morning with some higher-ups to discuss the article, so any screenshots/video/whatever you have would be immensely helpful, and I will, of course, keep you posted on everything that happens. Patrick. To be frank, I have literally thousands. It's easier on my end and yours, if you can narrow it down to specific instances you're interested in, and then I can filter for those. Yes, I'm a search engine for my own campaign of terrorism. Patrick proceeded to send Josiah a series of Microsoft Paint drawings that depicted him grinding African-American children into pepperoni. A couple of days later, Josiah approached Patrick with promising news. Upon reviewing the interview and the materials provided by Patrick, Josiah claimed the higher-ups at Huffington Post showed great interest in Patrick's narrative, particularly regarding Section 230 and Patrick's allegations that the FBI refused to cooperate with him. Patrick, falsely assured of knowing the identities of Quasi, Space Edge, and other trolls, now believed that Huffington Post was preparing an article about him and that his phone interviews with Josiah would remain confidential. Josiah would ask Patrick for evidence of the harassing texts O and A sent him. He would respond with screenshots that showed the troll's texts, but not Patrick's response. You see, Patrick has a habit of intentionally deleting the responses he writes to trolls before showing them to other people. As we covered in the previous episode, he even tried pulling this on a judge while in court during a restraining order hearing against a troll. It didn't work out in his favor. Josiah would request another interview with Patrick.
It's Josiah again. How are you?
Hello, I'm well.
As with last time, just so we can get this out of the way, this is being recorded, obviously not for public release, but just for our reference, just to let you know that. And just to give you a little bit of background, I know we talked a little bit about this over email, but I played our interview from last time during our morning meeting, the morning after, and it definitely generated a lot of interest. I don't think a lot of people were fully aware of what was going on with this community. There's definitely a huge interest in the story, and possibly more than one part. You asked how long it was going to be. It's looking to be about 8,500 words as a gross estimate, though it's just right now we're in the beginning stages.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of...
I was thinking like 1,200.
No.
But okay, yeah.
By this point, Patrick had started bragging about his Huffington Post article to Seth Simons. Consequently, Seth published a brief article behind a paywall, declaring the impending demise of O&A forums. The mole would then send Seth screenshots from the secret forum, where Space Edge claimed he was going to ditch the Space Edge username online, hoping it would absolve him of the trolling he'd previously done. He also claimed that Seth couldn't legally name him as Canyon Boykin. Additionally, Space Edge would allude to a new forum that him and other trolls plan to migrate to, known as PFG forums. Seth responded to these revelations with laughter, remarking that Space Edge was, quote, fucked. The mole then inquired if Seth had any idea about when the article would be published. Seth would reply, "I believe early next month, knock on wood. It's not going to be me. Just can't deal with the potential backlash right now, financially, mentally. But I know Anna and another publication are working on them." Basically, at this point, Seth was admitting that he was too scared to be the face of the article naming Space Edge as Canyon Boykin. Patrick also received the same screenshots, responding, "Amazing. His life is over as soon as the article drops. He seems to think the slate gets wiped clean when he dumps the Space Edge username, and that's just not how this works." A couple of days later, the mole emailed Patrick and Seth once more, attaching screenshots of a post by Space Edge announcing that the new site would be coming soon and that there would be a system in place that allowed O&A forums users to transfer their accounts to this new forum. A series of posts on the forums also suggested Quasi may have been behind Space Edge's identity originally being leaked. With this development, Patrick and Seth interpreted the growing rift between Quasi and Space Edge as worsening. Coupled with the impending Vice article naming these two key figures, and the supposed Huffington Post article Josiah claimed was in the works, Pat and Seth arrogantly believed that the O&A forums was soon going to collapse. A short time later, Patrick would reach out to Josiah, sharing his entire evidence folder in order to help with the Huffington Post article. This folder was a treasure trove of material, with an Excel sheet of trolls' IP addresses, a randomly sorted collection of phone numbers and usernames, and a handful of screenshots and pictures of various things trolls had done to him, like fax photoshopped images to a local bar he frequented regularly. Patrick went as far as to include Norm Macdonald in his list of harassers, simply because Norm had innocently made a joke cameo video for O&A forums without realizing their affiliation. Additionally, Patrick targeted numerous Amazon and Goodreads reviewers who had left honest reviews of his book. It's evident that Patrick was attempting to exploit the situation to have negative reviews of his books removed. Simultaneously, he desperately pleaded with people on social media to rate his books 5 stars, even if they hadn't read them. This desperate plea for positive reviews highlights the stark reality that very few people actually read Patrick's books. Available sales data suggests that the numbers are even more dismal than one might imagine, making positive reviews all the more crucial for any semblance of success in Patrick's pathetic facade as a writer. It seems like Patrick's fixation on O&A stems from a pattern of failures in various aspects of his own life. He struggled academically, achieving a low GPA in high school, and faced failures in his professional and personal life, including incidents as a lifeguard and in his relationships. His failures as a husband and a father are particularly concerning. Patrick allowed his wife to sit on another man's lap and become entranced by his massive peace. In addition to this, he later threatened to kill his wife and newborn daughter. For this, he would plead guilty and lose all custody in his divorce. He also later lost his blue check mark on Twitter. Given this string of disappointments, it's understandable why Patrick might latch onto the hope of winning an internet dispute against a fan club associated with a Sirius XM radio show. It could be seen as his last chance for validation or redemption amidst a long history of failures. Afterwards, Josiah and Patrick would exchange emails discussing some other questions Josiah had. When asked about who was paying his legal fees, Patrick gave a vague answer alluding to a, quote, professional organization of which he is a member. Patrick would go on to claim that Quasi was receiving legal funding from Chris Italia in order to fight back against the lawsuit, but that the divide between Space Edge and Quasi meant the O&A forums was doomed. Josiah and Patrick agreed to another interview to discuss the latest developments.
Hello?
Hey, Patrick, it's Josiah. So I understand there's been some pretty big developments over the past couple of days. Can you sort of explain that?
Yeah, I mean, I sent you some screen grabs, but without the context, probably doesn't help too much. Basically, what's happening is that two of the power users on the forums, namely Quasi, who is the administrator, Quasi 101, that is,
right,
and then Space Edge, who has been one of the chief harassers and doxers for going back for more than a year and a half now, have been coming to blows. Space Edge believes that Quasi has worked either with another journalist named Seth Simons or with my lawyers to sell out and give up the identities of at least several of the most prolific of the forum users. This isn't actually true, but that's what he's got in his head. So we're just gonna let him keep having that in his head. But anyway, so because of this, they've been getting increasingly angry with each other, and there's a growing rift amongst community. And now that Canyon Boykin, who is the actual real life ID of Space Edge, believes that his information is getting out there, he's been much less careful about what he's saying in the group chats. So what's happened is we found out that what you and I had talked about the last time we spoke. Sorry, a second. What you and I had talked about the last time we spoke about the possibility that Quasi was being funded from outside. Well, it turns out that's true, and we even know who's doing it. His name is Chris Italia, and he is the owner of The Stand, New York City, which is a comedy club that has been closely aligned with the alt-right. So Chris Italia is actually the one who has been fronting most of, if not all of the money for Quasi 101's legal defense. But what's more, Canyon Boykin and several other people on the boards, like longtime members of the board, like user Coonskin and Carol Maxine, they have inadvertently confirmed, for me at least, what Quasi 101's identity is as well. Because we had a screen grab from a while ago, with the mole that you had been talking about and talking to, where he had gotten a screen grab of an envelope that had the name of Rahul Kumar on it, and as well as an address there in New York City. And as I told you before, I was much less confident about that ID as I was with Canyon Boykin. But that's no longer the case, because Canyon, as well as several other people, have in those shots that I sent you, been using really anti-Indian slurs specifically against Quasi.
Against Quasi, yeah.
So, and between that and the fact that we now know that Chris Italia, being in New York City, is the one who's been funding this whole thing, to me that's confirmation that this, Indian American named Rahul Kumar, who lives not even a mile away from the Stand Comedy Club, I think we can call that a positive identification at this point.
Interesting.
Patrick would forward an email from the mole over to Josiah, saying Space Edge's website was going public soon. Patrick would tell Josiah that the article needed to be released as quickly as possible because their time to expose Canyon Boykin was growing short. In addition to his other grievances, Patrick complained that Space Edge had started texting him while pretending to be various WWE characters. He and Josiah would arrange a fourth interview to discuss the updates in Patrick's lawsuit and the article's developments.
Yeah, not really sure where to start, but with regards to your question the other day about them going off on these pro wrestler things.
Right.
Really, what you've got to understand with these people is that there's really one focus for them at all times, and that is, like, I call it performative cruelty.
Uh-huh.
They are simply playing this out to try and extract the most pain and suffering out of the people they are targeting as possible, so that they can then go and show off and brag about it to the other sociopaths. It is as a way of buying capital amongst themselves, so that they can then come back and brag and show off about how they've found a new way to hurt somebody, how they found a new way to intimidate or threaten somebody, how they've found new ways to inconvenience someone's life or make them waste time chasing after something. You know, that's always been the point of this group. They egg each other on to do more of that.
Right. So you're saying the WWE stuff is sort of like style points for their sadistic.
It's a bit. They like WWE. They enjoy the idea of being the heel. So they co-opt that sort of language of that subculture also while they're showing off for each other, while at the same time harassing me, while at the same time threatening me, trying to intimidate me, all of it.
Right.
At this point, Patrick had began to publicly hint on Twitter about his knowledge that Space Edge was Canyon Boykin. In fact, he even started making a lame series of tweets called Canyon Facts, where he tweeted random shit about canyons in an obvious attempt to intimidate Boykin. Patrick would later write Josiah, detailing what he thought was happened with Space Edge at the moment. Canyon believes a number of things that are not true. 1, he believes his own bullshit. That I'm a coward too afraid of a real fight to confront him. 2, he believes the mole never existed, or was actually Seth Simons all along. 3, he thinks their current correspondence is secure. It's not. 4, he believes I'm somehow legally barred from disclosing his ID publicly, or he can sue me. None of these things are correct. Patrick would also share a series of voicemails he claimed to have received from Space Edge, further leading him to believe Space Edge was Boykin.
Some advice on making your comedy set better. One is to brush your fucking pissy yellow teeth, and the other is to stick a gun in your mouth and pull the trigger. Fuck you. I may not be a cop anymore, but I can still make your life a living hell, Patrick. Good morning, Rick. It's one more day closer to your lawsuit getting thrown out. It's one day closer to your permanent fatal heart attack. Tick-tock, motherfucker. Tick-tock. What fucking pedophile? You think Seth's article's gonna scare me?
Patrick would also send Josiah his email correspondence with the Milwaukee Police Department. Patrick would send an email to the police where he made a variety of claims about how O&A Forums was supposedly stalking and swatting him. An officer replied saying, "I have the info, and as you know, it will be a long investigation, and that is if we can identify the actors. Currently been working on the riots, so not a lot is being addressed at this time." Patrick also included another voicemail he received, alleging that the troll accidentally referred to Quasi by his real name, revealing it to be Rahul. However, some have argued that the person in these voicemails sounds remarkably similar to Patrick himself.
So nice of you to be buying all these things for Rahul's new house, you fucking fat faggot.
Subsequently, Josiah informed Patrick that following extensive deliberation and research within his team at Huffington Post, he would soon provide him with the specifics regarding the progress of the article. At this point, vice journalist Anna Merlin would reappear, sending an email to the mole. "Hey, so sorry I didn't get back to you sooner. I'm still not sure about a publication date. Our lawyer is really going to need to sign off on this one. Do you have a sense of why Quasi and Space Edge had a falling out? Like what triggered that beyond the fact that everyone seems kind of unstable? The mole explained to Anna the same story he had fed Patrick and Seth earlier about Quasi and Space Edge's separation. At this point in the story, it seemed inevitable that Anna would eventually convey to Patrick that the article was not going to happen. Throughout the Josiah interviews, Patrick had made a slew of outlandish statements, including saying that every O and A troll needed to be put to death. Furthermore, he had presented numerous dubious pieces of evidence lacking substantial backing. By this stage, it appeared that certain individuals at Vice with more discerning instincts either detected Patrick's falsehoods or had suspicions that a deceiving figure like Thomas Apostle might be orchestrating the show from behind the scenes. Patrick would then email Josiah about the status of the Huffington Post article. Patrick, just pinging to see if you heard from your supervisor about the status of the piece. Josiah, yes, I got some emails back. I also have news regarding Canyon Boykin. We have a reporter that will be trying to get an interview with him. It was brought up a lot in our discussions that Boykin may simply point to the spoofed phone numbers that are regularly on the forums, so it was decided they would attempt an in-person interview. I will have updates on that soon. Patrick and the mole would exchange a few emails about Canyon. Patrick later sent the mole another email on September 10th saying, "Watch for fireworks. Something's coming today." In the early hours of the next day, Space Edge's account would disappear from the O and A forums. Patrick was under the impression that Canyon Boykin had received a visit from Huffington Post reporters demanding explanations. However, it was clear that Anna had also confronted Patrick over the fact his Vice article had been cancelled. As a result, Patrick began to panic, sending a series of frantic emails to Josiah. "Why can't I find your name anywhere online, Josiah? Who is your editor at HuffPo managing this story? I'm beginning to think you've been playing me." Josiah would respond, calming Patrick's nerves. "I got a call this morning from the reporter contacting Canyon. They made contact with his wife, but she said he wasn't home. They said that they were going to return this morning. I'm not part of the management team, so I don't have a biography on the website. I can have my editor contact you as soon as they fully accept the story as something they want to run, and I'm sure they can go over any verification issues you may have." The day was September 11th. September 11th is an important day on O and A forums for more than one reason. Many members call it Norm 11, and September 11th, 2021 marked the 3-year anniversary since Patrick Tomlinson's tweet criticizing Norm Macdonald. This was also the day Josiah Munoz would reach out to Patrick Tomlinson by phone one last time to deliver the devastating news that the Huffington Post article was also cancelled. But unlike the Vice article, Josiah would reveal the reason why was that he wasn't a Huffington Post journalist at all, and that it was all a scheme to troll Patrick.
All right. Hey, Patrick, I think I lost you there. What's up?
Yes, sorry about that. I was coming in and out of a building that has a bunch of steel in it, and I think it probably fucked with my signal. So anyway.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay, I was just gonna say that I spoke with my supervisor about getting in contact with you. She says that you're a fat faggot with bitch tits, so we're gonna have to cancel the article.
Oh, well, the problem with that, sweetie, is that we already figured that out.
You already figured out that you're a fat faggot with bitch tits?
No, we already figured out that you're a complete posing liar, and by the way, you weren't the only person.
Oh, okay. Is that why you did like 2 hours of interviews with me? You're just that intelligent?
Yes, child.
What'd you say?
Yes, child. So what do you think you're going to do with those 2 hours of interviews exactly? Go ahead and explain it to me.
I'm gonna post them on YouTube.
Good for you, child. What do you think that's going to accomplish other than showing you to be the sociopath and loser that you are?
It's also gonna show that you're a gullible liar and that you're also fat.
No, child, it won't, because I didn't lie to you in any of those interviews. That's the only problem you guys keep having. You see, I've never lied to you about anything. That's the problem you keep coming back to. Everything I've ever told you has always been true and accurate.
Oh, so you're paying for this lawsuit out of your own pocket? Yeah, that's totally not a lie.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
You said you're paying for this lawsuit out of your own pocket. That's obviously a lie. You don't have that kind of money.
Okay, well, the problem with that, child, is that I didn't say that in those interviews.
Yeah, well, you've said it many times to us and in public, so
No,
now we know.
child, I
Yes,
haven't.
yes,
No,
child,
child,
you
I
have.
No, child, I haven't.
Yes, child, you have.
No, child, I haven't. You see, this is where you keep screwing up because you don't actually listen to what I'm saying.
Okay, I'll make sure to accompany those interviews with screenshots of text messages where you said that you're paying for all of this with your own money. How's that?
Didn't actually say that, little baby girl.
Yeah, you
Anyway,
actually
I'm
did.
going to enjoy what happens to you next.
Yeah, I'm gonna enjoy what happens to you next too, faggot. Enjoy bankruptcy.
Baby child, it only gets worse for you from here.
No, it only
You
gets
don't
worse from
know
you.
How much worse it gets for you from here.
Have fun paying
You're
Rahul.
going to learn. You sound like you have peanut butter in your mouth, little baby child.
Alright, you have like the faggiest comebacks, dude.
Baby child, you don't have anything to say to me. You're always wrong, and things are only getting worse from here.
Yeah, you've been saying that for the past 3 years. So
No, child, I haven't been saying that for
yeah,
the past
you have.
3 years. I've been saying that for about the past year, and I've been right for about the past year.
No, you've been saying it for the past 3 years.
Baby child, you keep talking. Your little mouth keeps making sounds that don't make any sense except to you because you're delusional.
Go get fucked in the ass by Nikki, you faggot.
Baby child, be quiet. It
Make
gets
me,
worse
faggot.
from here.
What the fuck is that? Yeah, enjoy bankruptcy and enjoy losing the lawsuit and yeah.
Oh, but again, baby child, I'm not facing bankruptcy. That isn't on the table.
If they try to collect on that loan,
That is a delusion. Shut your stupid little fucking mouth, child. That is a delusion that you believe because you have to. We're not facing bankruptcy. That isn't a thing.
well, you will be when they come to collect that lawsuit money. We know you didn't
No,
pay.
child. No, child.
Oh, so
We
somebody
aren't
was just
facing
nice enough.
bankruptcy, and we will never owe anyone a penny.
So somebody was
You're
just nice enough to throw down $100,000 in a frivolous lawsuit,
Child,
you idiot.
Little infant baby child, your mouth keeps running, but your brain isn't listening to what's being told to you. We will never owe anyone a penny. Quasi has already lost. You didn't pay attention to the hearings. Okay?
The hearings where he said that you have insufficient evidence and he's going to rule against you unless you provide evidence of specific defamation on the behalf of Quasi.
Child, baby, infant, stupid child, you didn't listen to the hearing.
Yeah, I did.
You didn't. No, child, you didn't.
Yeah, I did.
No, child, you did not. Because if you did, you would have heard the important part towards the end that the judge told you. But you didn't hear it.
You have
Because you're
1 week to
crippling.
give me
No,
evidence or I'm going to
Your mouth
approve the
keeps
quash.
running when it has nothing to say.
This tape was immediately uploaded to YouTube and shared on O&A forums. Additionally, Apostlegate Chapter 1 was shared as a blog post on the website Medium, before later being moved to apostlegate.net. Space Edge's account would reappear on O&A forums the same day, posting Apostlegate Chapter 1 and the phone call recordings to the forum, thereby exposing his and Josiah's elaborate scheme. Patrick began to seriously freak out and immediately sent an email to the mole. I'm going to need a very, very good explanation why the HuffPost reporter you sent my way and vouched for turned out to be one of the people stalking my family. Because right now it looks to me like you've been pulling a long con to get the information out of us they never managed to, and have been giving us bad intel so we focus on the wrong people. The mole would respond, I'm going to be speaking to Anna on the phone, but in short it looks like they used a spoof number that matched Huffo's office number to trick me. I'll paste all the info I have on them as soon as we have the call, and she verifies it's fake. Nobody is really telling me what even went on. So did your lawyer check them out and it wasn't real? Patrick replied, writing, They put our entire phone conversation on YouTube after calling me Saturday night to call me a fat faggot, which you would know if you were watching the forum at all. So the question is, how did they know your contact information in the first fucking place? Because that doesn't make any sense. If I sound angry, it's because I am. I seriously don't know how we can trust anything you've told us up to this point. Talk to Anna. Maybe she'll have some ideas. A short time later, Anna Merlin would email the mole to inform him she knew Josiah was not a real Huffington Post reporter and demanded an explanation. The mole would respond, asking Anna to talk with him over the phone, but she would dodge it with an excuse instead. She later pretty much forced the mole to answer her questions via email, refusing to talk over the phone. The exchange went as follows, with Anna writing, Read the blog. Now I'd really like to chat with you again. This seems like a huge investment of your time. What do you feel like you got out of it? Or what do you think it proved about Seth, journalism, etc.? Quite a long con, I'll give you that. Did you realize at some point I was not going to publish a story anytime soon? What was your aim where I was concerned? The mole would write back, Sure. I was hoping we could do a call, but we can do a few questions here. It didn't take much time to send an email here and there. But yes, formatting all the content into something semi-readable that made sense did take time. You would probably know more about this than me. I don't even write as a hobby. 2 reasons. The first one being that Tomlinson has told literally everyone around him about Vice and Huffington Post. I knew what the status of Huffington Post was, but when he started oinking the loudest about Vice, I knew it was possible you had interviewed him. Take a look at the Huffington Post interview content, and you will see him say things like, all these people should be put to death. I knew if you talked to him, he had probably said things like this to you, and it was over. Second reason is that you told me so. Intentionally or not, I don't know. Certain words that you used was a dead giveaway. I was interested in what you would write. You're easily the most senior journalist involved here. You made good calls on what our constitutional right to free speech is. You saw the lawsuit for the joke it was when you watched the hearing. It's obvious the real story here isn't Patrick or Seth. People are made fun of every hour of every day. It's probably for the best you called it then, because Patrick straight up fabricated a good chunk of the evidence he sent to Huffington Post. As a group, we don't just instantly dislike you and wish for your misfortune. It was a hope that if you published a piece, it would be fair. We don't need or expect you to take our side 100%. That's not your job. We have had several podcasts and news outlets release content about us, but not one of them has ever contacted us. Time, Jason Sanford, The New Republic, Strictly Stalking. People and many more have all done reports. If Patrick had lied to you and you were fair, I wouldn't have let you keep it up. If Patrick would have sent the false evidence he sent Huffington Post, I would have told you. I realized that wouldn't 100% absolve you from responsibility, but I also didn't bring you into this. I know you mentioned you had an issue with Reddit before, but that could have been literally any one person out of thousands of people. While I did pull your name on our logs and it was there, nobody remembers you. It was very mild, and several users even thought you looked great in leather. Anna would respond asking about what evidence Patrick had faked, and quizzed the mole with a handful of questions about his identity and motivations. However, she continued to refuse a phone conversation. She also alluded to the fact that she had knowledge of the SFWA. As a result, the mole decided to pose a few questions himself, asking Anna about the allegations made against SFWA. She would not reply following this email. It's worth mentioning, a short time following all of this, the New Republic would add a large retraction disclaimer to the top of Seth's articles, warning readers that the information was not fact-checked or verified. Ironically, this would not be the first time the New Republic had published an article with fabricated information, with the publication being swept up in a similar scandal in the late 90s. With all of this going on, the New Republic does not appear to be a very reputable news source. The Mole would go on to email Seth Simons saying, "If you have any comments about what has happened, I'll publish them in my article." He would include a link to the Scott and Todd phone scam song, an O&A reference popular among forum members. It was obvious now to Patrick, Seth, and Anna that they had all been duped by Space Edge, aka Thomas Apostle, who was behind the Mole character. With the help of Josiah and a handful of O&A forums members, Space Edge had tricked Seth Simons into publishing an article full of fake information about Chris Italia, had tanked Patrick's lawsuit by convincing him to introduce Seth's article and other fabricated posts as evidence, and additionally fooled Anna Merlin and others at Vice into wasting months of their time, all while discrediting Patrick and Seth in the process. And in addition to all this, Josiah had created one of the funniest phone exchanges with Patrick to ever happen, with an enraged Patrick screaming into the phone for nearly 30 minutes. At this point, Patrick's lawsuit had its next hearing in California. Pat's entire case had just crumbled, as the Apostlegate articles confirmed to everyone that Canyon Boykin and Rahul Kumar had zero association with O&A forums and were randomly chosen to lead Patrick and Seth on a wild goose chase. Patrick's entire lawsuit now depended on the failure of a quash made by Quasi. However, the judge would approve of the quash, effectively killing the lawsuit. As I covered in the previous video, Patrick not only spent over $100,000 of SFWA's money on his own legal fees for the suit, but due to how the California civil system works, also owed Quasi over $50,000 in legal fees. I covered the debt saga in more detail in the previous video, but Patrick ultimately ended up owing Quasi nearly $70,000 due to interest that was added to the debt by the time it was localized in Wisconsin. The website payquasi.lol keeps live track of Patrick's debt to the O&A forums admin and shows Patrick has currently paid $50,000, still owing another $20,000. Throughout the court proceedings, Patrick would continue to incessantly reply to the trolls that would send him text messages. Additionally, through some turn of events, it seems at one point Patrick had even pocket-dialed a troll's number and left a voicemail where he can be heard saying, "When I find them, they're dead."
Helped us. There was 5 of us. We were all seated. We were all drinking. Oh, they're the worst people in the world.
We have no idea who they are.
No. And as soon as I find out, they're dead.
We're all playing on that?
Yes, I would. Please, thank you.
Well, I wasn't.
No, I know you weren't. They bug me every single day, dozens and dozens of times a day. They don't bug me. They send the cops to my house with their hands on their guns, trying to assassinate me on my...
With Patrick's victimhood status now called into question, Seth Simons' credibility as a journalist destroyed, and Quasi receiving $70,000 out of Tomlinson's own pocket, it appears that O&A forums emerged as the victors against Patrick Tomlinson, Seth Simons, and cancel culture, largely due to Thomas Apostle's campaign of deception and trickery. Thanks for watching today's video. That's all we're going to cover for tonight. Make sure to like and subscribe, and tune in to our other videos. There's a great playlist on my channel that fully covers the Patrick Tomlinson saga. This has been Cryptic Web Chronicles.